welcome back to Variant Quran. Let's talk about something very important today. The Quran manuscript studies are continuing. The big book is in process. Don't worry, these things are coming. Meanwhile, there is an old saying, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I want to talk about the matter of illegal immigration in the United States today. It is a matter that has been at the forefront of the concern of the American people for decades now. And the reason that Americans have been very concerned about it is, among other things, the American culture is very keyed in on the idea of fairness and justice, meaning equality of everybody before the law. Now, justice does not always occur, but when it doesn't occur, Americans, to as much or greater extent than many people in the world, have a strong aversion to things that we believe are unjust or the unequal application of laws. And this actually works in favor of the rectification of things such as the abolition of slavery, the passage of civil rights legislation, and so forth. And, there are different nuances to these debates, but by and large, the ability that we have had to appeal to fairness and to justice in getting these things done has allowed them to be passed and become reality. So into that context, we have a system of self-governance, and I've talked about this before on this channel. In the United States, the sovereign is not a king, it's not a president. The sovereign in the United States is the American people. The American people are the ones who govern this nation, and we do so by electing representatives who go to Washington and propose, debate, amend, pass, and sign into effect laws that govern our nation. So in effect, what we're doing is we're governing ourselves. And so one key question that we would ask if we're determining, are we self-governed, are we effectively self-governed, is, are the laws of the people being upheld as they are written? It's very difficult. It's easy to say, I want things to be this way, or to go ahead and do things a certain way. It's more difficult to make the case for why what you want to be done, or what you think should be a law, in fact, ought to be a law. And so there's a process that makes it intentionally difficult. You have to pass through the houses of Congress, you have to pass through the House of Representatives, and then through the Senate, and reconcile and all these processes before it gets to a president's desk, and then the president has to sign. A president can veto a piece of legislation, and so forth. So there are these layers that make it difficult to get laws passed. So once a law has been passed in the United States, generally it is the case that you can be pretty sure that it does represent the will of the American people. Much more so than if you have something like an executive order. Now, executive orders have a purpose, and they are a function that is delegated to any president. They do have a purpose, but an executive order is often done in situations where, in many cases, it's not seen as something that even could get through Congress because it's something that's unpopular generally with the American people. And so there have been several instances of things done by executive order in the past couple of decades, 15, 20 years, that are precisely this. Three that come to my mind were the entry of the United States into the Paris Climate Accords. This would never have passed through Congress. It's a treaty. It would have never have been able to clear the bar for a two-thirds majority in the Senate to get passed in the Senate to cede that sovereignty away from the United States over to an international body and to join that treaty. So what did President Obama do? He went and did it by executive order because it was the only way he was going to get that to be done. A second example of something unpopular with the American people that was done by executive order is the joining of the Iran deal. Now, there was a deal that was going to set Iran on a pathway to getting nuclear weapons. And it was opposed by many on the conservative side of the American aisle. And in fact, in 2015, I was in Washington, D.C. at a rally against the Iran deal because what? Because it was going to set Iran on a pathway to be able to get nuclear weapons, and we didn't feel that was a wise thing to do, given the rhetoric and the tenor, the culture in Iran that is very quite openly has promised to destroy the United States and so forth. It was and in many other cases, and our allies, including Israel. So the Iran deal would not have been passed because the American people do not want Iran to get nuclear weapons. So it was another example of something that Obama did by executive order. And then, of course, when President Trump came in his first term, he undid it. He was, by the way, Trump spoke at that rally that I mentioned in 2015, alongside Ted Cruz and Mark Levin and several others against the Iran deal in the first place. This is before we had even entered it. And so anyway, Obama did it anyway, setting Iran on a pathway toward nuclear weapons. And Trump undid it when he came in during his first term. And then, of course, Biden went ahead and committed us to that. Again, this is a treaty, but it wasn't, there would not have been support for it. Biden rebound us to it by executive order. And of course, now Trump has removed us from that again. Now, meanwhile, while we've been a party to these things, damage has still been done. Iran has been, set incrementally on steps to things. But anyway, that's not my main point for this video. I wanted to give you three examples of unpopular things that were done by executive order that could not have cleared Congress. First was the joining the Paris Climate Accord. Second was the Iran nuclear deal. And third was the DACA amnesty, the declaration that there would not be deportation. There was going to be a deferment of deportation for a certain category or class of illegal aliens in the United States. And these were people who came to the United States first before they were 18 years old. These are minor children who came to the United States illegally, brought illegally by parents who entered the country outside of our ordinary process and in defiance of our laws. And so this was, of course, widely pushed by the left, who just want to legalize everybody because they're trying to remake the electorate. But it was never popular with the American people, even though it's a category of people. If you take the entire body of illegal immigrants and you say, well, people who were kids, it wasn't the rhetoric around this is that it's kids, it wasn't their choice, it's no fault of their own, whatever, their parents just sought a better life for them and so forth. We're going to talk about those things in a moment. But before we come around and talk about the rhetoric surrounding the DACA amnesty, I just want to point out, in the 2016 election, there were initially 17 candidates on the Republican side. 17. And of those candidates, only 2 of them were solidly and unquestionably with a track record, on record, as opposing the legalization of illegal immigrants. What we call amnesty for illegal immigrants. Every one of the other 15 candidates in some way had supported legalization of some or all of the people who are currently here illegally. And if you look back at that time period, you will notice that the only 2 candidates who made it to the end of the process were Ted Cruz and Donald Trump. I believe it's because of this one issue. This is an issue that Americans care very deeply about. The other issue was Obamacare, which we can talk about later, the multi-step movement towards making the United States into a socialist country. But the number one issue was controlling our borders. Why? Because the American people have a deep sense of what's fair. We do have a process that's very fair for people coming into the United States. The main point is that we have a legal immigration process. And that process sometimes takes a long time. Why? Because a lot of people want to come to the United States. And when you are waiting to go into to a theater, to a show or something like that, and if there are a lot of people that want to go see that show, you're going to have to stand in line and wait your turn. And so the fact that sometimes people have to wait a long time is not because the process is cumbersome. It's just because the line is long. And then certain countries have, we try to admit people from around the world and so forth. That is what it is. So it is not the case that you cannot come to the United States. You just have to, if you want to come legally, you have to come through the process and through the laws of the United States. And also, by the way, you have to be somebody you have to meet certain criteria. Among other things, you can't be anti-American or trying to, or part of an ideology or an organization that is committed to the destruction of the United States or the things that we believe in, such as the Communist Party, if you're a member of the Communist Party, or or have advocated for it or for the overthrow, or certain terrorist organizations, you can't enter the United States. You can't get a visa to come into the United States. And I think that's one of the most logical and rational aspects of any nation's immigration system. So on the side of this, when people take it upon themselves for whatever reason, if you are seeking a better life, let's say you want to come to the United States for economic reasons, because you want to have, you see a land of opportunity, you want your kids to grow up in a place that is, gives them the chance to become tremendously successful, and where they can, be safe from harm and so forth, then you may want to come to the United States. And you have the opportunity to do that through the legal process, because we are a land of opportunity. We are a nation of laws, and we try to follow those laws equally for everybody. If you want to come in here and, you are not an enemy of the country, you can probably do so, depending only on your patience and willingness to put forth the effort to do that. So that is the situation. And so when people come and say, I just wanted a better life, and they cross the border illegally, why? What they're doing is they're really taking the easy way, and they're cutting the line in front of everybody else. And they are undermining, and this is the most important point in my view, they are undermining the fabric of our society, which says everybody has to be equal before the law. The entire national conversation, very painful process of affirming that slavery must be abolished, was resting upon that same premise, that people have certain inalienable rights and that everybody needs to be equal before the law. The slaves were not being equal before the law. They were human beings who were not being treated equally before the law. So the same principle is being applied here. When people cross the border and say, I don't have to follow the same laws as everybody else, this really strikes very deeply, I believe, at the American psyche, at the American sense of fairness. So that brings us to the situation with what President Obama did. He said, well, there's a category of people, we know that he really wanted to legalize more people, but he started with the people that he thought he could pull the American people's heartstrings on. And those are the people who came as children. And some of these people were, 20, 30, 35, 40 years old at the time that DACA was passed. They came many years ago as minor children. But when people think of the DACA program, they think of a sweet, innocent child who's just coming along, whatever, has no opportunity to take responsibility for himself or herself, and so forth. And so that was a little bit easier for a politician to say, well, I'm going to do this because it's uncompassionate to deport people or to hold them accountable to the same laws as everybody else. And so what they did is, the stroke of his pen, Obama said, well, no president can legislate. He can't change the law. He can't say, no, you're no longer subject to deportation. In fact, he can't, according to my understanding of the law, and somebody who knows this may want to comment in the bottom, he can't do the deferment that he did for an entire category of people. But what he basically did is said, look, there are two classes of people in America. There are people who have to follow the laws, and there are people who don't have to follow the laws. And I am creating a class of people who don't have to follow the laws. And there are people who came here before they were 18 years old, who are not U.S. citizens, who are illegally present, but we're not going to hold them accountable to the same laws as everybody else. So that's the situation we're in now. And all the time has gone past, it faced Supreme Court challenges and so forth. But I just want to emphasize to you as viewers that in the political world, often things are painted to pull our heartstrings. And even the name of the dreamers, the so-called dreamers, the DACA people who are maybe John, who's been here since he was 16 years old, and he came across with his parents across the border, and now he's 35. If he's 35 years old, he's been here for 18 years, 17 years, as an adult with full accountability to the law. He's been here illegally. He's made the decision at age 18 to continue to defy the laws and the will of the people of the United States by refusing to return to the country of his citizenship. Now, each one of these DACA Amnesty recipients has a citizenship, and that citizenship is in some other country. And so what each of these people should do is return to the country of their citizenship and then decide whether they wish to enter the United States or not. And if they do wish to enter the United States, they should begin by getting in, at the back of the line of the people who are currently waiting to enter the United States. So that's the way the process ought to work. Now, let's come around and talk about this for a minute. Why would we not? Let me play the devil's advocate. Why would the American people not just say, well, it's okay. We'll let this go. We'll let this go. And in order to answer that question of why we shouldn't do that, I want to go back a little bit to the reasons that many people have brought their children to the United States in the first place illegally rather than legally, or in many cases, sent them across the border illegally without parents through dangerous situations across the desert. Many of these children are sexually assaulted or trafficked or worse. Some of them die in the process. So what is causing any parent to do that to their child? And the answer in many cases, whether it's somebody who brought their kids or sent their kids, in many cases, not all cases, is that that parent envisions a better life for the child if they can just go through this process. They think that if they enter the United States in this way, that at some point in the time, the American people will say, okay, you can stay. And that child henceforward will have an opportunity for a better life. As the parent sees it, education, work, income, whatever, all the blessings of being an American, living in the United States of America, that parent envisions it for their child. Okay? So that's a pretty powerful draw for parents. Now, let's take that motivation and then imagine out two scenarios. One scenario is the one in which the American people say, yeah, those kids can stay. We can let them stay. What happens for future generations of parents who are making the decision whether to go through the hard process of applying to enter the United States legally, perhaps waiting 6, 7, 8 years, maybe in some cases longer, paying the various official fees for that? I don't think they're too high, but going through the process of waiting to enter the United States the right way, or just cross the southern border or the northern border, or whatever way you can enter the United States. And one day, because the American people have shown you that your kids are going to be just fine. What are we telling? What are we broadcasting to the world? And my contention is that, as in the 1986 amnesty, which Ronald Reagan did, which is widely acknowledged to have been probably the biggest mistake that he ever made as president, this becomes a magnet. This is not going to end the problem. This is going to increase the problem, because now we're broadcasting to the world that the American people don't really care about their laws. They don't really care if people come in illegally, and you are going to be okay. So just come on along, and don't worry about trying to follow our laws. This had actually, the situation we're in right now as the United States is, I believe, largely a result of that huge, colossal, enormous mistake that Ronald Reagan made by going along with the amnesty of 1986, when he should have just said, no, the law is the law. If you are not here legally, you need to go back and come in the right way. That would have been the fair way to do it. But he didn't. He went along with it. The same sorts of people who are saying, oh, we need workers, we need laborers, whatever. Look, if we need workers for farm or for restaurant or whatever, Congress can pass a law creating a temporary work permit or whatever. They can do things with immigration. But what you can't do is say, yeah, we have this need, so we can just get around the law. We can ignore the law. That's not right. So that's the scenario. What we're doing if we do another amnesty, which I don't have any overt indication from President Trump that he's considering this, but what I do know is that some of the people who are major proponents of amnesty for dreamers, so-called, and other people who are supposedly just seeking a better life, who haven't committed a crime aside from being here uh, illegally as illegal aliens. Some of those people who are advocating for that, and organizations that are advocating for that, are in the sphere of influence of President Trump. And my concern is, and I know that other people who are against amnesty are in his sphere of influence as well. So we're praying for him, President Trump. If you ever happen to watch this, we're praying for you. We appreciate you. We love what you're doing and all that. But I just want to strongly urge you not to make the biggest mistake of your presidency, which would be the fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. It would be, we now know what the result of granting amnesty to illegal aliens will be, because we've seen it after 1986. And if you should happen to be giving any ear or being persuaded by anyone who's telling you that you should legalize the Dreamers or not undo the DACA amnesty and just undo it by the swipe of your pen, just as President Obama so inappropriately did by the stroke of his pen. If you're in any way considering it, I just very strongly urge you, do not do it. There's nothing uncompassionate about telling people that they need to follow the same rules as everybody else. It will be screamed about by people who have been dreaming about this, who hate the American, people who hate the American people and hate our laws, are going to have a fit if you start asking everybody to follow the same rules. But you know what? Most of the American people, those are the loud voices, but most of the American people will greatly respect you and greatly understand. And in fact, we elected you 3 times. We elected you 3 times, and this is not made lightly. The statement is not made lightly. I've done a great deal of research on this. I believe it's all beyond question in my mind that you were elected in 2020. But be that as it may, that's a separate question that should not cloud this whole picture here. In every instance, including the 2024 election, what was at front and center of the issues upon which you were reelected? It was the enforcement of our borders, the enforcement of our immigration laws. You promised the largest mass deportation in U.S. history, and this is not something that the American people embraced because they are vindictive and mean and angry and whatever. It's because we have a sense of fairness and we want our laws enforced. In essence, we want self-governance. We want the rules and laws that we made as a people to be upheld by our government. We want our rights to be respected. We have a right to self-governance, and we want that to be upheld. And if there is any sort of amnesty for illegal aliens, including the so-called dreamers who arrived here as children. Look, there are all kinds of people who have dreams. There are American people who have dreams. Tom Hellman, by the way, Tom, if you get a chance to see this as well, great job. Your messaging is right on point. Look, American people have dreams. And by the way, there are so many people, there are so many kids and adults who are sitting at their home in Mexico and El Salvador and Germany and other places. Not everybody there wants to come to the United States, but there are many, many people. For all the millions of people who are here illegally now, who are, by the way, bad citizens. If you are thumbing your nose at the laws of the United States, you are not the sort of person we want in this country. Meanwhile, there are all kinds of wonderful people who would love to come to the United States, who dream of coming to the United States, who have dreams of success and achievement and pursuit of all the opportunities that life has, who the only reason they are not here right now is because they respect the United States and they respect the laws of our country. Those are the people that we should be bringing in, and we should be replacing the current illegal aliens with the sort of people who have already shown that they respect us by holding back and going through the legal process or waiting until they have the opportunity to go through the legal process. That's my discussion for today. I don't think this is a light thing, and just one concluding remark is that the fabric of our society is strongly composed of the threads of the common commitment to certain principles. And if we introduce into the fabric of society a very large number of people who do not believe that the laws should apply to everybody, and those people one day, God forbid, start voting, we are going to have a hugely transformed society that is not going to be able to uphold the rights and the liberties that we have determined are good. Lawless people have different ways of looking at the world than people who are committed to the rule of law. Americans are not perfect, but we do have a very high and noble set of principles that we are striving to, as a nation, to affirm and to uphold. And I think we should be moving more in that direction and not less in that direction. Well, thank you for watching. I thought this was important enough to sit down and create a video about today. Friends who are watching this channel as a variant Quran, I have one additional translation of the Quran manuscript book that is Amharic, that is in final editing, and I'm working on a second after 5 years. We are now the 6-year anniversary of corrections in early Quran manuscripts, and there's a sequel to that book coming as well. God willing, this year. Thank you for those who have supported me through Patreon and through other means, through I2 Ministries and other ways. Leave your comments in the bottom. I am one day going to do a video acknowledging by name the people who have been generous in supporting me. So if you want that recognition, I know people don't do it necessarily for recognition, but I believe that is warranted, and I very much appreciate that. So if you're not supported, please do consider leaving going to the bottom and seeing the Patreon or I2 Ministries tabs where you can do that. Also, take a look at my books. I have books on the Quran manuscript topic, which thankfully, even around the world, thank you for those in Germany. Germany is, people are buying the German edition of the book. The Spanish edition is now out. Portuguese is out, and there will be more. So thanks very much. Arabic is on the way as well. So all that is, I'm not sure if I mentioned that before, but Arabic, the translation is done. We're just, it's a little bit trickier for typesetting. So thank you very much. And I will be speaking in California at the Our Strong Tower this year. It will be my second time attending, third time speaking at the conference. So a little plug for that. I really look forward to that. One of the reasons is that I have the opportunity there to go a little bit beyond and talk about the societal issues. Of course, we have a situation in this country which is partly related to the immigration matter, and that is how to navigate the different scenarios. How do we navigate the problems that could arise if we allow people to come into the United States who are enemies of the Constitution, who wish to not become Americans and live as Americans under the principles that we have established as a country, but rather enter this country with an intention of one day overthrowing those principles and replacing them with something else. I think this is a very serious threat. It is a threat that is not made up. It is a very real threat. And so I'll be talking, I expect, about that topic. Okay, well, thank you. That's enough for today, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you, friends. Bye.